Los Angeles, California. It was Saturday evening, March 14, 1992, approximately 8:47 p.m., when 23-year-old Will Smith walked into the grand ballroom of the Beverly Wilshire Hotel for the American Television Awards, wearing a custom black Armani suit that cost him 2 months of his Fresh Prince salary. His palms were sweating. His heart was pounding. Because tonight, Will Smith wasn't just attending this ceremony. He was nominated for Best Actor in a Comedy Series, the first rapper in history to receive this honor. But something was wrong. The moment Will stepped into that ballroom, he felt it. The way certain executives looked at him. The way conversations paused when he walked past. The way smiles appeared on faces but never reached the eyes. Will had learned to recognize that feeling. It was the same feeling he got in every room where people questioned whether he truly belonged. The host that evening was Richard Coleman, a 62-year-old television legend who had been making audiences laugh for 3 decades. Coleman was known for his sharp wit, his fearless comedy, and his willingness to say things other hosts wouldn't dare. Hollywood loved him for it. They called him untouchable. Will took his seat in the 3rd row, right next to his co-star Alfonso Ribeiro. The cameras were rolling. Millions of Americans were watching live from their living rooms. And when Richard Coleman walked onto that stage, microphone in hand, spotlight blazing, nobody in that room could have predicted what would happen next. Because in exactly 12 minutes, Will Smith would do something that no black entertainer had ever done on live television. And the words that Richard Coleman was about to say would echo through Hollywood for the next 30 years. But what were those words? And why did they push Will Smith past his breaking point? Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from tonight. To understand what happened that night, you need to understand what Will Smith had already survived just to be sitting in that room. 3 years earlier, Will Smith was broke. Completely, devastatingly broke. The IRS had seized almost everything he owned. His rap career with DJ Jazzy Jeff had made him a millionaire at 19, but bad investments and careless spending had left him with a tax debt of nearly $3 million. He couldn't afford food. He was sleeping on friends' couches. The kid who had been on top of the world was now wondering how he would survive the next month. Then Quincy Jones made a phone call. Quincy had seen something in Will, something beyond the rapper. Something beyond the entertainer. He saw a young black man with charisma, intelligence, and the kind of presence that could change television forever. Quincy convinced NBC to take a chance on a 21-year-old rapper with 0 acting experience. And in September 1990, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air premiered to an audience that didn't know they were about to fall in love. But Hollywood didn't make it easy. Will faced constant disrespect. Executives who called him the Rap Kid instead of learning his name. Interviewers who asked if he was really from the ghetto or just pretending. Industry parties where security guards stopped him at the door while white actors walked right through. Every single day, Will had to prove that he deserved to be there, that he wasn't just a gimmick, that he wasn't just a token, and he did it with a smile. Will Smith smiled through every insult, laughed off every microaggression, played the game exactly the way Hollywood wanted him to play it, because he understood something that most people didn't. He understood that his success wasn't just about him. Every Thursday night, millions of black children turned on their televisions and saw a black family that looked like theirs. A black man who was smart, funny, and successful. Will carried that responsibility in his chest like a second heartbeat. But there's only so much a man can carry before something breaks. And on that night in March 1992, standing in a room full of people who saw him as entertainment rather than an equal, Will Smith finally reached his limit. The ceremony had been running smoothly for almost an hour when Richard Coleman returned to the stage for his mid-show monologue. The audience was relaxed, champagne was flowing, laughter filled the room after every joke. And then Coleman's eyes found Will Smith in the 3rd row. "Ladies and gentlemen," Coleman said, his voice dripping with false warmth, "we have a very special guest tonight. The Fresh Prince himself, Will Smith. Give him a hand." The audience applauded. Will smiled and waved, the way he always did. But Coleman wasn't finished. "You know, I have to be honest," Coleman continued, his grin widening. "When I heard a rapper was nominated for Best Actor, I thought they were joking. I mean, what's next? Are we going to give awards to the guy who washes my car?" Nervous laughter rippled through the audience. Will's smile froze on his face. "But seriously, Will, congratulations on your little show. It's amazing what affirmative action can do these days, isn't it? NBC needed a colored face, and lucky you were available." The words hit Will like a physical blow. Colored face, affirmative action. The implication that he hadn't earned anything, that he was just filling a quota, that his talent, his work, his sacrifice meant nothing. The room went quiet. Some people laughed uncomfortably, others looked away. But nobody said anything. Nobody stood up. Nobody told Richard Coleman that he had crossed a line that should never be crossed. Will felt his grandmother's voice in his head, his mother's prayers, every ancestor who had survived things far worse than words so that he could sit in this room tonight. And he felt something else, too. A heat rising in his chest, a clarity cutting through the humiliation. Will Smith stood up. The cameras caught it. Every eye in the room turned toward him. Alfonso grabbed his arm, whispering, "Will, don't. It's not worth it." But Will was already moving, walking toward the stage with steps that were slow, deliberate, and absolutely certain. Security guards shifted nervously but didn't stop him. They had never seen anything like this. Nobody had. Richard Coleman's smile flickered. For the first time in 30 years, he looked uncertain. Will climbed the 3 steps to the stage. The spotlight was blinding. Millions of viewers held their breath. And in that moment, before a single word was spoken, everyone in that room understood that something was about to happen that could never be taken back. What did Will Smith do next? Stay with me because this is where everything changes. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from right now. The sound echoed through the ballroom like a thunderclap. Will Smith's open palm connected with Richard Coleman's face so hard that Coleman stumbled backward, grabbing the podium to keep from falling. His glasses flew off. His microphone dropped. And for 3 full seconds there was absolute silence. Then Will spoke. His voice was low, controlled, and carried a weight that made everyone lean forward to hear. "You will never disrespect me like that again. You will never disrespect my people like that again. I am not your entertainment. I am not your punchline, and I am not going anywhere." Security rushed the stage. Cameras kept rolling. The audience erupted into chaos, some people shouting, others frozen in shock. Will didn't resist when security reached him. He simply turned, looked directly into the nearest camera, and walked off that stage with his head held high. Within 1 hour, the footage was playing on every news channel in America. Within 6 hours, Will Smith was the most talked about person in the country. And within 24 hours, powerful people in Hollywood began making phone calls that would determine whether Will Smith ever worked in entertainment again. The initial reaction was brutal. Headlines called Will violent and out of control. Commentators questioned whether a black man could handle the pressures of fame. NBC executives held emergency meetings about canceling The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Will's agents called him frantically, begging him to issue a public apology. "Grovel if you have to," they said. "Your career depends on it." But Will refused. He sat alone in his apartment that night, replaying everything in his mind. The insult, the slap, the way it felt to finally stop smiling through the pain. And he made a decision that would define the rest of his life. He would not apologize for demanding respect. The next 72 hours changed everything. Black radio stations across America began playing clips of Coleman's insult, and their listeners responded with outrage. Churches in black communities held discussions about dignity and self-respect. Letters poured into NBC, not demanding Will's firing, but demanding accountability for Richard Coleman. And then something unexpected happened. Other black entertainers began speaking out, privately at first, then publicly. Denzel Washington released a statement calling Coleman's words inexcusable. Oprah Winfrey dedicated a segment of her show to discussing racism in Hollywood. Quincy Jones personally called NBC executives and told them that firing Will Smith would be the biggest mistake they ever made. The tape was reviewed, again and again. America was forced to listen to exactly what Richard Coleman had said. The context changed the narrative. Suddenly, Will Smith wasn't the aggressor. He was the man who finally said enough. Richard Coleman's past was examined. Other racist comments surfaced. Other people he had humiliated came forward. Sponsors began distancing themselves. His network issued a statement expressing concern. And within 2 weeks, Richard Coleman announced he was stepping back from television to spend time with family. He never hosted another major event again. But Will Smith's battle wasn't over. Because proving a point is one thing, building a legacy is another. And what Will did next would transform him from a sitcom star into one of the biggest movie stars the world has ever seen. 1 month after the incident, Will Smith sat across from Barbara Walters in his first major interview since that night. The whole country was watching. Everyone expected him to apologize, to express regret, to play the role that Hollywood had always assigned to black entertainers who stepped out of line. Will did none of those things. "Barbara," he said, his voice calm and steady, "I'm not proud that I resorted to physical action. Violence is never the answer I want to give. But I am proud that I stood up. I'm proud that I didn't laugh along with my own humiliation. And I'm proud that millions of young black kids watching at home saw a black man refuse to be disrespected." Barbara pressed him. "But don't you think you damaged your career, your reputation?" Will smiled. Not the performance smile he had worn for years, a real smile. "My grandmother used to tell me something," he said. "She said, 'Will, you can lose everything in this world, money, fame, opportunities, but don't you ever lose your self-respect, because once that's gone, you've got nothing left worth having. I'd rather have my dignity than 1,000 awards.'" The interview changed public perception overnight. People saw a man who was thoughtful, principled, and unapologetic about demanding basic human respect. The ratings for Fresh Prince didn't drop, they increased. NBC quietly dropped all discussions of cancellation, and Hollywood began to see Will Smith differently. Directors who had dismissed him as just a TV actor started calling. Producers who wanted someone with presence, someone with depth, someone who could carry a film began sending scripts. The qualities Will had shown that night, courage, conviction, the willingness to risk everything for principle, those qualities translated into something powerful on screen. In 1993, Will Smith was cast in 6 Degrees of Separation, a dramatic role that proved he could act. In 1995, Bad Boys made him an action star. In 1996, Independence Day made him the biggest movie star on the planet. None of it would have happened if Will Smith had apologized. None of it would have happened if he had smiled through the insult like he was expected to. The slap heard around the world didn't end Will Smith's career. It launched it. But there's one more piece of this story that nobody talks about. One conversation that happened years later in a place nobody expected. And what was said in that conversation will stay with you long after this video ends. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Are you still with me? In 2003, 11 years after that night, Will Smith was filming a movie in New York when he received an unexpected message. Richard Coleman wanted to meet. Coleman was 73 years old now. His career had never recovered. He had spent the last decade in relative obscurity, remembered primarily for one moment of cruelty that had defined his legacy. He was also dying. Cancer, 6 months to live. Will agreed to the meeting. They sat together in a small cafe in Manhattan. 2 men whose lives had intersected in a single, explosive moment that changed both of them forever. Coleman looked frail, nothing like the confident host who had commanded stages for decades. "I've thought about that night every day for 11 years, Coleman said. "I told myself it was just a joke, that you overreacted. But I was lying to myself. I knew what I was doing. I knew it was wrong. And I did it anyway because I thought I could, because I thought there would be no consequences. He paused, his eyes wet. I was wrong. And I'm sorry. Not because I got caught, not because it ruined my career, but because I diminished another human being for entertainment. And that's something I have to carry with me. Will listened. He didn't interrupt. And when Coleman finished, Will said something that surprised them both. I forgive you. 3 words. Simple. Powerful. Final. Coleman died 4 months later. Will Smith attended the funeral. He didn't speak publicly about their meeting until years afterward. But that conversation represented something important. It represented the completion of a journey that had begun with anger and ended with grace. Because true strength isn't just about standing up, it's also about knowing when to let go. Richard Coleman probably never understood the full impact of what he set in motion that night. He thought he was making a joke. He was actually making history. The slap that echoed through that ballroom in 1992 became more than a moment of confrontation. It became a symbol, a turning point, a reminder that dignity is not negotiable, respect is not optional, and silence in the face of humiliation is not strength. Will Smith went on to become one of the most successful entertainers in history. 2 Academy Award nominations, billions in box office revenue, a legacy that will outlast everyone who doubted him. But when asked about his greatest achievement, Will doesn't talk about movies or money or fame. He talks about that night. I learned something important in that moment, he said in a later interview. I learned that you can't control what people say about you. You can only control what you accept. And I decided that night that I would never again accept being treated as less than human. That decision changed everything. For everyone watching this video, the lesson is simple but profound. You will face moments in your life when staying silent feels safer, when laughing along with your own humiliation seems easier, when the cost of standing up feels too high. But the cost of staying down is higher. Will Smith walked into that ballroom as a sitcom star. He walked out as a man who proved that respect isn't given, it's claimed. And sometimes, it's claimed loudly. Thank you for watching until the end. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from.